set, and crack!
Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Army of Thieves. This movie tells the story of a mysterious woman who recruits a bank teller to assist in a heist of impossible to crack safes across Europe. Will they succeed in the end? Let's find out in Army of Thieves. Army of Thieves begins by showing a man telling the story of Hans Wagner, a legendary locksmith who makes 3 special safes. Hans Wagner believes that no one can break into the safe he made, and this has been proven until now, where no one has been able to break into Hans Wagner's safe. Sebastian, the man who tells the story of Hans Wagner, often uploads videos about safecracking on his YouTube channel, although they don't get much attention. In everyday life, Sebastian is an ordinary man who lives an ordinary life as a bank teller. One day, when he came home from work, Sebastian got a notification in which a mysterious figure commented on his video upload about Hans Wagner. The comment turned out to contain an invitation to take part in a safecracking competition. Feeling interested, he then interacts with the mysterious figure, until finally he is directed to a place where an underground safecracking competition is taking place. Sebastian, who is taking part in the competition for the first time, looks confused when an officer pushes him into the middle of the arena. The competition committee announced that only the 4 people who would break into the safe the fastest will advance to the next round. In the midst of confusion and time was running, Sebastian was trying to break into a safe and managed to move to the next round. It seemed that luck was on his side because he was able to go through several race stages to finally reach the final round. Even though it was his first time, he managed to win the safe-cracking contest. In the clamor as people celebrate his victory, Sebastian's gaze accidentally collides with a beautiful woman who has been observing his skill in breaking into safes. However, the woman immediately disappeared when Sebastian tried to chase after her. The next day, Sebastian went back to his usual routine. Before going to work, he usually stops by a coffee shop and buys his favorite coffee. But that morning, he instead met the woman he saw in the safecracking contest arena at the coffee shop, where it turned out that the woman was deliberately following him. The woman then introduced herself as Gwendoline, a reliable international thief who commented on Hans Wagner's video uploaded by Sebastian. After showing a bit of her stealing ability to Sebastian, Gwendoline then reveals her reason for coming to him. She is interested in recruiting Sebastian in a robbery that will be carried out by her team. Sebastian was then surprised to hear this, because it was the first time someone had openly asked him to commit a crime. Sebastian was about to refuse because he's not a criminal. But Gwendoline says that this is no ordinary robbery because they will break into 3 legendary safes made by Hans Wagner. Sebastian, who really admires Hans Wagner, begins to consider her offer. After much thought and curiosity, he finally agrees to join Gwendoline and her group. That night, Sebastian watches a broadcast on television that tells about a zombie epidemic that has begun to spread throughout the city and gives him nightmares about zombies. The next day, Sebastian then went to the address given by Gwendoline. He was greeted by her and immediately introduced to the members of her team, which consisted of an expert hacker named Corina, a reliable driver named Rolf, and a man named Brad Cage who proclaimed himself the leader of the group of international thieves. Without further ado, the 5 of them immediately discussed plans for a bank robbery and a casino that had a safe made by Hans Wagner, who was in Paris, Prague, and St. Moritz. Gwen then added that the owner of the 3 safes made by Hans Wagner was Bly Tanaka, who was notorious for being cruel. Long story short, they immediately headed to Paris to carry out the action. When he first saw the safe made by Hans Wagner, Sebastian was so shocked and subconsciously told the story behind the creation of the safe. But, at once, he felt pessimistic that he would be able to break into the safe. However, Gwen assures him that only he can break into Hans Wagner's safe. After being convinced by Gwen, Sebastian was ready to break into the safe while listening to classical music, which Hans Wagner also often listened to when making the safe. It didn't take long. He finally managed to break into the safe. Sebastian, who was overjoyed at having managed to break into Hans Wagner's safe, couldn't contain his excitement, even though they only stole a small part of the total amount of money that was actually in the safe. Sebastian's goal was not money. On the other hand, the action of Gwen and her group breaking into Hans Wagner's safe in Paris was immediately noticed by an Interpol agent named Delacroix, who was very obsessed with catching the gang of thieves. After Brad, whose real name was Alexis, shot him a few years ago. Delacroix thinks Gwen and Brad's gang will break into 3 of Hans Wagner's legendary safes this time. Therefore, he and other Interpol agents immediately prepared to head to the other safe location. Back at the base, while celebrating his success, Sebastian seems increasingly interested in Gwen. especially when she expressed the same interest in Hans Wagner's safe. Gwen says that Hans Wagner has one more safe which she says is a special one. Gwen tells Sebastian that the safe is in Nevada and that's why she wants to go there despite the zombie outbreak there. The next day, the crew travels straight to Prague to the location of the second safe, and before they know it, their plan is discovered by Delacroix, who follows them with an Interpol Special Forces unit that has been trying to capture Gwendoline and the crew for years. Arriving at the location of the second safe, Gwen and Sebastian have a little trouble entering the safe room, but Gwen can disable the guards so Sebastian can break into the safe. On the other hand, Brad, who began to worry because his two friends never managed to break into the safe, while the guards began to suspect their actions, finally made a diversion by pretending to rob the bank. Delacroix, who turned out to be in the wrong place, immediately rushed to the right location. Interpol finally arrives when Sebastian has managed to break into the safe and escape with Gwen. Rolf immediately stepped on the gas from there because their actions had been noticed by the security guards, and Brad received a gunshot wound to the shoulder in his attempt to escape the guards. Sebastian and Gwen are forced to run with a bag filled with money because Rolf can't stop while Interpol is chasing them. After handing over all the bags filled with money, Brad immediately grabbed Gwen and helped her into the car, but he deliberately left Sebastian because he was jealous of Sebastian. After Brad and the others left him, Sebastian had to struggle to escape from the pursuit of Interpol and return to his residence. Gwen is furious at Brad's act of abandoning Sebastian, even though her original plan was to dump Sebastian after the 3 robberies were over. According to Gwen, Brad did this on purpose because he was jealous of Sebastian. Because there is still one more safe to break into, Gwen decides to leave the team and will continue the action with Sebastian. Karina, who also agreed with Gwen, then followed her and left Brad and Rolf. Sebastian, who has just arrived home, is suddenly surprised by the presence of Gwen and Karina, who say that they have left the team and intend to form a new team with him. According to them, pursuing Hans Wagner's challenge to break into his safe is far more important than any monetary gain. After being persuaded, Sebastian finally agrees to continue the robbery with the 2 women. On the other hand, Interpol gets information about the robbery plan that Gwen and her team will carry out at 5 in the morning. The 3 headed for St. Moritz, the location of the last safe in Europe, while Interpol has also arrived there. When Delacroix and the team arrived at a casino where Hans Wagner's safe, he immediately alerted a manager at the casino about the imminent theft and asked to tighten security. But the manager said they had received a warning from Interpol hours earlier suggesting moving the safe to a safer place. It turned out that Delacroix and his team had been tricked by Karina, who deliberately hijacked Interpol's communication channels. Meanwhile, Gwen manages to hijack a truck carrying a safe where Sebastian is already hiding in it to quickly break into the safe. Karina, who was at the casino monitoring the situation, noticed Brad and Rolf's presence and alerted Gwen right before Interpol caught her. On the other hand, Sebastian attempts to break into the safe in a moving truck while they are chased by Brad and Rolf and Interpol. Despite frequent shocks due to the uneven road surface, Sebastian manages to break into a safe containing a large amount of cash. However, before they can escape with the money, Brad and Rolf arrive and intend to stop them. Brad points a gun and threatens to kill Sebastian. But it turns out that Brad's gun has been tricked by Gwen so that it doesn't work, and it's Gwen's turn, who is now pointing her gun. After defeating the 2 men, Gwen then handcuffs them to a truck so Interpol can catch them and flee with Sebastian. Before escaping by boat from the Austrian town of Hallstatt, Sebastian and Gwen finally confess their mutual feelings and express a desire to go to Nevada together and break into Hans Wagner's special vault that was there. However, Delacroix manages to catch up with them both and asks them to turn themselves in while threatening them with a gun, which Gwen responds immediately by doing the same. Because of her love for Sebastian, Gwen then negotiates with Delacroix to free Sebastian. Gwen deliberately sacrifices herself to be caught so that Sebastian can escape with the money. Gwen then promised Sebastian that she would meet him as soon as she was released from prison. On the other hand, Sebastian vows to see Gwen again one day before leaving there by boat. The film ends by showing a man entering a locksmith shop in California with a woman. They were looking for a professional locksmith in the shop and finally met Sebastian, who had changed his name to Ludwig. They then offer him the opportunity to break into the legendary lost safe of Hans Wagner, which Gwen has also told about, and they agree to break into it together once Gwen is free. Because he had been waiting for the opportunity to break into Hans Wagner's legendary safe for so long, Ludwig accepted the offer. The film ends,